are going to talk about 10 tips to a better, stronger sumo deadlift. Apparently Watson wants to be in the video. A little about me if anyone's interested. I am a personal trainer and I am currently finishing up my master's degree in kinesiology and biomechanics. So weightlifting stuff is basically my life. So I'm here to help in any way I can and give you the best possible tips and tricks that I can give you to be the safest and strongest in the gym that you could possibly be. Right, Watson? Hi. So, we are going to talk about 10 tips to a stronger, more stable deadlift. So, we're going to talk really fast about 1 and 2. We're not really going to go over how to do it, just because that is a whole other video in itself, and I don't have time for that. So, in this video, I do have time for it, just not in this video. So, mobility and stability. The reason why it's important is because when we want to get into a sumo deadlift, that requires my hips, and I need to be able to sit back down into that position with my hips able to move into that position. So if you don't have enough mobility and you're really tight and you get to here and you're like, oh, I can't do that, we got to work on that before we even pick up a barbell. Stability, core. That's going to be working on deadlifts, squats. Those things do build core stability, but it's good to do some extra stuff on the outside just to make sure that when you brace that core down, you have a really strong, especially transverse abdominis that can act as that internal weight belt to keep that spine nice and safe when you're doing the lift. So mobility and stability are very important when it comes to properly executing a deadlift. So now we're going to move on to number 3. So we're going to talk about it a little bit. So we want to make sure we have a neutral spine. So that means we want a neutral spine from pelvis, tailbone, all the way up top of the head. So, and this to me, no matter how heavy it is, we want to try to maintain this proper positioning throughout the entire movement. So when I get into my positioning, wide stance, toes out a little bit. When I come down and get set, I want to make sure that my spine from the top of my head all the way to my tailbone is nice and flat. I don't want to be rounded. I don't want to be hyperextended where I'm sticking that out. I want to be nice and neutral. I don't want to pull with my head up. I don't want to have my head down. I want to be nice and neutral. So that's the most important thing. Keeping that back nice and stable throughout the entire movement. We're going to move on to number 4. We want to keep those shins perpendicular to the ground. So what that means is when I get into my wide stance and I come down, when I drop down, I want my shin to be straight up and down from all angles. Like it's sticking straight out of the ground. I don't want to have it be angled this way. I don't want to have it be angled this way. I want to get my shins as straight up and down as possible. So, number 4, keep that tibia and fibula perpendicular to the ground, like it's a little plank, just growing straight out. So number 5, we want the tripod foot. So that means when I set, I want to make sure I have 3 points of contact on each foot. So, foot. Let's see if I can add in. You want to make a triangle with the 3 points of contact. So, using that tripod foot is going to help create stability because you're creating a stable base to press up from. If you have all your weight in your toes, it's going to cause shifting. If you have all your weight in your heels, it's going to cause shifting of the center of gravity. So we want to make sure that both feet are firmly planted on the ground, nice and stable. So that was number 5. Number 6, we want to engage the lats. What does this look like? When I set to pull, what's going to happen is I want to take my shoulders and I want to pull them back and I want to pretend like I'm trying to bend this bar in half. That's what I want to do. So I'm down and you're going to see me when I lock those lats out, I'm going to lock them down. I'm going to be pulling them down and pulling that bar almost against my body so that I can keep the bar directly over my midfoot throughout the entire movement on the way up. So if I were to try to pull without locking my lats, it's going to look kind of like this. Don't want that. If I'm going to pull and I lock my lats, it's going to look like this. That's what we want. So, number 6, engage those lats. Pull those shoulder blades back in together. Brace that whole core from the back to the front everything needs to be tight. We don't want any energy leaks in the kinetic chain from the top of your head all the way to your tripod foot. So, number 7, breathing. If we are going really heavy, we want to make sure that we are properly bracing the core. So, we need to create as much intra-abdominal pressure as possible. And how we do this is before we go to pull that deadlift, we're going to breathe in deeply into the stomach, breathe it in the stomach and hold it. Brace down, flex those, brace all of those core muscles like you're trying to, I don't know, poop. So you want to brace all those core muscles as tight as you possibly can and get as stable a spine as you possibly can, because this is going to help protect the spine throughout the entire movement. So breathing is very important. Number 8, we want to imagine, instead of pulling the bar off the floor with our arms, we want to imagine that we are holding the bar stable and we're pressing the floor away from us. Now the reason this is important is because the beginning half of the movement, from when the bar is on the ground to when you get up to right past your knees, you want the movement to be a pushing movement with the low body. Once the bar gets up past the knees, then you can start to stand up straight. So what that's going to look like is I'm going to get set, I'm down, I'm going to imagine that I'm going to push away from the floor until the bar gets to the height of my knee. So what that's going to look like is I'm down, I'm set, my hips and my shoulder are going to move at the exact same pace, same rate. They're going to rise exactly together, and then I can stand up straight. So until the bar gets up to my knees, I want my hip, the hip point, and my shoulder, I want them to rise at the same time. I don't want to do butt up and then come up. That's going to put stress on the low back. I don't want to try to pull up and then stand up. That's also going to put stress on the low back. So we want the hips and the butt, the hips and the shoulders to rise at the same time, all evenly. So I'm braced down and locked down, come up, 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 and then I can straighten up. So press the floor away. Don't pull the bar off the floor from the ground. It's a little more of a mindset change, but I found that it really helped me when I was trying to think of how to initiate a heavy deadlift. So, on to number 9. At the top of a deadlift, we want to make sure that we move into hip extension, but not hyperextension. So a lot of people like to talk about squeeze your butt cheeks, make the raisin butt cheeks. The only thing that's really going to do is push your hips into hyperextension, which we don't want, because all that really has the possibility of doing is overloading that low back, putting extra pressure on it, which we don't need. So what it's going to look like if you're hyperextending, you're going to get down, you're going to get braced, you're going to pull, and we don't want to do that. We want to start from the ground. We're going to pull, we're going to brace, we're up, and we come to straight, but there's no reason to really flex the butt and go forward. We just want to come to straight and then come back down. So avoid the temptation of pulling into hyperextension, because that's just not good for your back, and there's really no muscular or strength benefit to doing that, so the risk is far greater than any possible reward. So just stay within extension, don't move into hyperextension. Number 10, last but most important. Well, it's all important, but number 10, you want to make sure. So really quick, little bit of biomechanics background, physiology. There are different types of contraction of muscle. There is concentric, which means the muscle is shortening. So when I do a bicep curl, when I come up, my muscle, it's shortening and contracting while it's shortening. So that's one type of muscle contraction. The other type is if I'm doing a bicep curl, when I'm moving it back down, my bicep is also contracting, but it's lengthening while it's contracting. There is more strength ability in eccentric than concentric. So eccentric is when the muscle is lengthening while it's flexing. So if you want to build strength or build size. Utilizing eccentric contractions is a great way to help create that overload of the muscle that we need to be able to create change and adaptation in those muscles. So when it comes to deadlifts, you're going to find the eccentric portion of the deadlift is on the way down. So what that means is if you want to get the most out of your deadlifts, you want to go down slowly. So you want to be braced, nice and stable, come up, but also braced, stable, slow down, because what that's doing is that's an eccentric contraction. You want that eccentric contraction to be strong and stable, and that will help build strength. What that means is we do not ever want to bounce the bar when we're doing deadlifts, unless you're doing a 1 rep max and you drop the bar after you pull. When we do reps, we want to make sure we go down nice and slow. What we do not want to do is get set, start pulling, and bonk. No, we don't want to do that. What we want to do is we want to get ourselves set, get set proper, brace everything down, neutral spine, all of the goodies, and then we want to come push away from the floor, come up, and then we're going to do the same motion in reverse. We're going to hinge, down, back up, and what we want to pretend is that there's some eggs on the floor, and we want to gently touch those eggs without breaking them and bring it back up. So, we don't want to be bouncing, because what happens when we bounce? We start being able to use momentum. That can be bad for a couple reasons. One, it kind of allows you to cheat because the hardest part of a deadlift is starting it. So if you are creating momentum where you're bouncing the plates off the floor, you're kind of cheating. You're not really using your own strength to pull that off the floor. Number two, when you start using momentum and doing faster reps, it is much more likely that your form is going to start to fall apart. So we want to avoid that. So not only is it safer to do it slow, but when you do slow and controlled eccentric contractions of the muscles on the way down, you can also increase strength and size faster than if you only focus on concentric. So those are my 10 tips to a safe, stable, and strong deadlift. One other tip that to me was huge, and I find a lot of people struggle with, and I did at one point, is when it comes to lifting, especially the compound movements that have the possibility of leading to injury if done improperly. Focus on form first. Get the mobility and the stability necessary. Get all of the cues down. Learn how to do the movement before you start worrying about the weight. So there should not be back pain after a heavy leg day. That means something is off. Something biomechanically isn't working correctly when you do those movements. So really focus on building a strong base, a strong starting point in all of your compound lifts so that you can then work up and get to your highest possible lifts without the risk of injury. Obviously, you're lifting heavy weights, so there's always an inherent risk involved, but to be as safe as possible, if you build from a stable base, you have a better chance of lifting way more safer than if you're trying to just throw weight around and not really concern yourself with proper form, proper biomechanics throughout the movement. So if you are used to deadlifting a lot, but you have back pain after, just take a step back. Just when you walk in the gym door, throw the ego out the door, drop the ego, and drop the weight, and build yourself up, because you'll find that if you start from a good, strong, stable base of form, mobility, and stability, you'll be able to get to higher weights in all of your compound lifts. So don't be afraid to drop the weight when you go into the gym. No one is there to judge you, and if they are, then who cares? They have their own things they gotta deal with, but I would say form over everything. I always suggest to any clients or anyone that I even work out with, let's start from the very beginning. Let's build a very strong base for our future lifting so that we can make sure that we are strong, stable, and safe in all movements, no matter how heavy we're going. Those are my 10 tips to a sumo deadlift. And if you have any questions, please let me know down below. And if you would like to see some other videos like this, also let me know, and I will talk to you later. Bye.